So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us for our January 11th, 2024, the first one of the year, TEA LEA Special Education webinar. So we're so glad that you could join us this afternoon. Just a few reminders. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the TEA webinar and newsletter website within a few days. The chat feature has been disabled, so I just want to remind everyone of that. You may submit questions into the Q&A section. We won't be answering the questions live, but questions are submitted and reviewed by the presenters here today. So again, the chat feature has been disabled and there's not any live Q&A. We've got a full agenda for this afternoon. We're going to start with Elizabeth Danner and some CTE FAQ review. Then we've got several people who are going to share information with you all around RDA, the public reports, the SD notifications, the determination levels, as well as some new RDA resources. And then we're going to wrap up today with some information about the assurance statements in the legal framework for SD3. So I think the numbers have slowed down a little bit. I hope everyone is logged on and ready to go. So our first agenda item is going to be Elizabeth Danner, who's here with us this afternoon. Thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us.
Thank you. And I have the fun today of sharing a resource that has been out for a few months, but I just wanted to highlight it for those who may not have seen it yet, or just do a quick little review and highlight some pieces of the Career and Technical Education, or CTE, and Special Education Frequently Asked Questions FAQ document. So you can find this document on the Texas Ped Support website. You can get there several ways. You can see here that I have bookmarked it under my account. You can also go to topics, you can select topics, and you can find it under state guidance. And you can also just do a search for it on the homepage of Texas Ped Support. Lots of ways to find yourself here. And when we pull this up, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger for my eyes and anybody else's who needs a little bit bigger font. So the content in here is really a collection of guidance that had been placed in different areas, or clarification that had maybe been shared through email. This is a consolidation of guidance. This is not a change to guidance. So that's one key piece. Anytime a new document comes out, there's always a question of if that's new or a change. And this is really just a collection of the clarification and guidance, as well as references to statute and rule. So you can see that the FAQs are divided into four main categories: ARD committee membership, teacher certification and classroom roles, special education services, including adaptations to course content and requirements, and just a short little section on vocational adjustment class. And the first thing that you see are the key terms and acronyms. The purpose of this is really to promote and support collaboration between CTE and special education. So some of the terms will be more familiar for special educators. Some of the terms, like program of study, will be more familiar to CTE educators. And so this was a way to just condense it, a really brief definition, so that we start conversations, collaborative conversations, with a common language. So that's really what you see there. And we're going to scroll a lot through the acronyms, a long list of acronyms. And this can also be a helpful sheet if you're doing collaborative work or exploring CTE information, and something looks unfamiliar. It might be included in the list of these acronyms. All right, so when we start with ARD membership, when is a CTE representative a required member? That is answered pretty clearly in the administrative code. But then we go into question 1.2, asks who may serve in the role of a CTE representative. So if we know when they're supposed to, when a CTE representative is required, but who may serve? And so the response indicates that the TAC, the commissioner's rule, is clear that the first choice for a CTE representative should be the teacher of record for the current or proposed CTE course. And the response goes on to clarify that in the case of a student enrolled in a CTE course that is taught by a special education teacher who meets appropriate certification to teach that course, such as career preparation, that teacher may serve as the CTE representative for a student considering initial or continued placement in that CTE course for which the special educator is qualified to teach. For example, a student who completed career prep 1 and is considering career prep 2, as long as that teacher, that special education teacher, is not serving in a dual role with any other required art committee roles. And there's a question that addresses dual role at the art committee. And the other piece to this response that I wanted to be sure to highlight is this clarifies what happens when the CTE teacher is not available. So this response says that in certain cases, the CTE teacher is not available to attend the art committee meeting. So to effectively plan for the student's progress, a staff member with knowledge of the CTE course or courses being considered may serve in this role. Notice that role is not specified, a staff member with knowledge. But this goes on to clarify that the CTE representative at the art committee meeting should be someone, that staff member should be someone who has a full understanding of the sequence of courses, course content, prerequisite skills, equipment and safety rules, possible certification and licensure requirements, related fees, and participation in related organizations. And as well as that, they would need, for a continued placement, they should be able to report on student performance and progress in the CTE program, be aware of and share any concerns, and explain whether accommodations or modifications have been effective for the student. And it also mentions the rules of excusal. And there's a recommendation that LEA operating procedures. Notice that it's a recommendation that LEA operating procedures outline how CTE representatives will be included in the art committee meetings, and that LEA practices reflect the inclusion of appropriate CTE staff in art meetings, with those rare exceptions for excusal or alternative staff. So that's one that I wanted to highlight for you today. And another is question 1.4. This has been a point of confusion. The way that the rules read, it says that a CTE representative is required when initial or continued placement in a career and technical education program. And that term program can sometimes be confusing because of the program of study, which you can read a little bit more about at the key terms up at the top of the document here. But so a lot of questions have come to the agency about, well, what is considered initial or continued placement? What is a career and technical education program? So the response is pretty clear. Very clear, actually. When enrollment in any CTE course is being considered, regardless of whether the student is pursuing an endorsement or a program of study, or both or neither, the art committee must include a CTE representative, and that also includes students enrolled in middle school courses. So you have that response there. So now we're going to scroll into the teacher certification and classroom roles, and I'm going to scroll down to question 2.5. And this is this response. So the question is, can a CTE class be offered only to students receiving special education services if appropriate? And this response had been posted to the TEA website, but it was also kind of buried under some updates. And so now it's included very clearly. And the thing to really highlight here is that we start with a student who receives special education services must learn in the least restrictive environment, LRE, and that to the maximum extent appropriate, a student must be educated with students who do not have disabilities. So it describes the continuum of placement options that we are familiar with, and the continuum of alternative placements must be considered, and these decisions are made on an individual basis by the student's art committee. And then the final bullet here is an important one, that because of the individualized decisions that must be made for each student with a disability, there must not be a pattern of guiding students with disabilities into any one program. So that's that language is now available for you here. So moving down the FAQ, we have the for special education services, including adaptations. It answers quite clearly that the TEKS for a CTE course can be modified. And it also clarifies that if a student needs significant modifications to the point where their ARD committee determines that their curriculum is not sufficiently rigorous to earn an endorsement, they've made that individual decision. Can the student take CTE courses aligned to endorsements? And the answer is quite clearly yes. Any CTE course may be considered by the ARD committee, regardless of whether the student is pursuing or is eligible to earn an endorsement. So that's another critical component there. And then I'll show you one more highlight. And that is, just wanted to highlight here the section 5.7 of the Student Attendance Accounting Handbook includes some additional requirements for CTE courses such as career preparation or practicum. And so this response gives a bit more context of how schools or ARD committees might make their determination, or what are some allowable adaptations and what may not be allowable. So just wanted to highlight that. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share, and thank you all for letting me join today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. It's always nice to know that there's a collection out there of some resources and it's all in one place. And so that's very helpful information. So we are now on to the topic of RDA. Jennifer, I believe you're starting us off.
Thanks. Hey, everybody. I'm Jennifer Patterson. I'm the director in the Office of Special Populations Strategic Supports and Reporting Unit. And I'm going to be talking about a couple of things that just came out yesterday from TEA around 2023 Results-Driven Accountability, or RDA. So I'm going to share my screen. So on January 10th, 2024, TEA posted the 2023 District Reports and Data Downloads on the Results-Driven Accountability Data and Reports webpage. The district reports include determination level data for the 3 RDA program areas: bilingual education, English as a second language, emergent bilingual, or BEESL-EB, other special populations, or OSP, and special education, or SPED. Additionally, the district reports include performance level data of the 4 federally required elements in the SPED program area. This data can be found on the summary page of the district reports. LEAs will also see their 2023 determination level data for the 3 RDA program areas in the Ascend platform accessed through TEAL by January 24th, 2024. TEA also released a To the Administrator Addressed, or TAA, correspondence on January 10th, 2024. That TEA covers topics including the 2023 Accountability Manual, Chapter 12, and the Appendix K, which has the indicator-specific information, LEA program area determination level terminology, monitoring activities and interventions, data issues and unanticipated circumstances for LEAs, RDA overview training and resources, and contact information. So these are the 2 things that came out yesterday, January 10th, 2024, for 2023 RDA determination level data. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to turn it over to Lori Merrill, who's going to share additional details on targeted monitoring and SD notifications, engagement calendars, and RDA program-specific activities.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction. So as Jennifer said, I'm Lori Merrill. I'm the Director of Monitoring, Review, and Support here at TEA. And I'm going to walk us through the items that relate to special education and RDA first. And then I'll switch gears and I'll talk through bilingual, ESL, OSP, RDA determination level activities, intervention calendars, and what to expect. So we're going to start off with special education, and we're going to start off with the 2 notifications that LEAs will let me rephrase. There's 2 notifications that are going out to LEAs today. Some LEAs are getting 1 notification, some LEAs are getting 2 notifications. So we'll go over both of those just to make sure we walk through what the letter organization is and what to expect. And those should go out here probably about another hour. Those should start hitting LEA inboxes. So let me share my screen. And let's see. So the first one is the notification that's going to go to an LEA that it was identified as significantly disproportionate for year 3. So that SD year 3 is how we code that. And in this notification, it's pretty standard. It'll have the LEA identifying information at the top, all the titles. So you're seeing the template that we use, but I wanted to protect and not show any LEA information today. So you're seeing the template. When you receive this notification, if you are an LEA that is significantly disproportionate in year 3, so SD year 3, you will see in the middle of the notification what that determination was based off of. So out of the different indicators and factors that could trigger an SD year 3, which one was your LEA determined SD year 3? This letter then will detail all of the activities that your LEA needs to engage in because of this SD year 3 determination. So it starts off by giving a link to that accountability manual, as well as the significant disproportionality webpage. As you scroll to the next, you'll see those 3 required activities. The first one is the policy practices and procedures review that you as an LEA complete. Then, as necessary, revise any of those policies, practices, and procedures, and then that reserve the maximum amount of funds for the Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, the CCIS. So those are the 3 requirements based on that SD3 determination. The next part of the notification really just gives you background on what triggers significant disproportionality. So there's 3 areas. There's identification, placement, and disciplinary actions. Again, if you're looking at your RDA report, you'll see that those are indicated on that public-facing report. It'll indicate the performance level, but then it'll also indicate if you had any SD in that indicator. So when you are SD3, some provisions are triggered. The first one is that review and revision of policies, practices, and procedures. This triggers the need to go into the legal framework and complete an assurance that indicates that you as your LEA did go in and review and revise any policies, practices, and procedures as needed based on the review. And that is due by April 12th. And Susan will be going into greater detail later on in our time today. The next is that public reporting of those revisions. So if that review triggered any revisions, any additions, to policies, practices, procedures, the expectation is that you publicly post those and report any changes that were made. And then the last piece is the requirement, the use of the maximum 15% of flow-through funds for intervening services. So those are those CCEIS funds. There is a survey link in the center of the notification. LEAs are to complete that survey by February 10th, 2024, indicating their intentions about reserving the funds. So that is the big ticket pieces. So you've got the February 10th date and you have the April 12th assurances are 2 items highlighted in the SD notification that your LEA will receive if they were determined SD year 3. The rest is just information and contact information helping you to locate resources. So that's the first letter. So that's one of 2 letters that your LEA could be receiving today based on determination levels. The next one is targeted. So for targeted, an LEA will receive a targeted notification based on their DL, so their determination level for RDA. And then for some, it'll be a pairing of their determination level for RDA as well as any noted SD3. So for the LEAs that have a determination level and SD3, you'll trigger the receipt of both of these notifications. If your DL level is the only thing that triggers a notification, you'll only receive this targeted notification. So in this targeted notice, you will see that there is an explanation of how the determinations were made, what targeted versus an intensive support review with our team. So for targeted, you receive a folder review if your LEA has a DL2, SD Year 3, a DL3, or a DL4. You could also receive a targeted folder review as well as an on-site review if your LEA was a DL2, SD Year 3 in 2 or more areas, and you did not participate in a targeted on-site review during the prior school year. So that is what triggers a targeted review with our team based on your RDA and your SD levels. Intensive supports are triggered by your DL3 and DL4 paired with SD Year 3. So if you have a DL3 SD3 or a DL4 SD3, that triggers an intensive support review, which entails a folder review as well as an on-site. So given those pieces, when you receive the notification, you will have met one of those criteria. So of those pairings of DLs and SD, if you receive the targeted notification, your LEA met one of those criteria. The notice will then go on to explain which activities your LEA will engage in. And so these are that bulleted list. If it says NA, your LEA is not engaging in that activity. If it lists out the qualifier that triggers that activity, your LEA is engaging in that activity. So if I am a DL2 SD3, it'll say DL2 SD3 next to targeted desk review, and it'll say DL2 SD3 next to targeted on-site review, because those activities are both triggered by my DL2 SD3. And with that example, that SD3 for the on-site is DL2 SD3 on-site with 2 or more areas of SD and did not previously have an on-site. So all of that's spelled out and explained in the notice. We've made it clear to where you'll understand which activity you will engage in. There is an element here of this collaborative root cause analysis focusing on areas of SD. That applies to our intensive supports, and that is only applicable if you have never engaged in one previously. So you will see here either an NA or a yes. I think a yes or no. No meaning that you previously participated in the root cause analysis and it's still in the same areas that you were identified SD. So there's still continued engagement based on that previous one. You don't need to initiate a new one. All LEAs for special education, so this is definitely unique to special education, all LEAs that received a DL2, 3, or 4 will complete the SSP by February 23rd, 2024. We've added this to this letter just to ensure that we know that you're engaging in all of these pieces and you're completing the SSP in the Ascend Texas application. And then we have contact information should you have any questions. Our team will be reaching out to any LEA receiving this notification today. We're going to give you about a week to process this notification, kind of look over your results that were released yesterday, start formulating your questions, identifying some areas, and then we will start reaching out to set up our introduction conferences with the LEAs who are receiving these targeted notifications. So those are the first 2 pieces I wanted to share. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to move over to the interventions for special education. Just to kind of highlight those activities related to all things results-driven accountability. So we just shared what happens if you're SD or if you're targeted or if you're a combination of both. So those activities are clearly spelled out in your notifications, but what about all the other pieces of RDA? So you all received your public reporting yesterday, you know your determination levels. There are resources posted on our results-driven accountability page down at the bottom. The intervention submission calendars is a big one to want to download. In it, it shares the due date of that SSP in Ascend, which is February 23rd. And again, for all DL2, 3s, and 4s. This again is for special education. I keep emphasizing that because it is different for bilingual, ESL, EB, and OSP. So we'll get to that part in a minute. But for SPED, DLs 2, 3, and 4, SSPs are submitted in Ascend by Friday, February 23rd. And then we engage in a cadence of meetings to review that SSP and activities, uh, beginning in March and going all the way through the end of June. So definitely check out this intervention schedule and the submissions calendar just to make sure you have a feel for when things are due. There's 2 big ticket dates. The first one being that February 23rd when the SSP is due to be submitted and Ascend. And then we wrap it up on June 28th when all evidence of strategy implementation and progress is uploaded into Ascend. So that was everything SPED that I was going to review with you guys. I'm now going to take off my SPED hat and I am going to represent our colleague Susie Cultress was unable to join us today for today's webinar, but we know we may have some of her ESC contacts and LEA representatives on the webinar. Plus, it's just good for us to know what all sides involved in RDA are doing. So we're going to switch gears, and now I'm going to visit with you guys about what your RDA reports mean related to your bilingual, ESL, and OSP. So for bilingual ESL and OSP, there is also a framework calendar that you can access that will provide to you all the dates and details of when and what is due. So very much aligns with our activities. What's different is what triggers these activities. So for bilingual ESL and OSP, SSPs are only required for DLs 3 and 4. For bilingual ESL and OSP, it is an optional activity for 1 and 2, meaning you will do those and maintain them locally. But for DLs 3 and 4, under bilingual ESL, EB, and OSP, you will submit those SSPs for review. And Susie and team will reach out to each LEA individual. They're reaching out to ESCs with information as well. So there's lots of communication that's going to center around this in addition to today's presentation. So you will have access to pieces of information and additional resources. LEAs will receive a notification today via email from Susie and her team indicating that you are a 3 or 4 and expected to participate in this SSP submission. ESCs will receive a list of their LEAs in their region on today as well. There is a big date for bilingual ESL OSP that is not shared by special education, and that is a training that is held on January 25th. Susie and team will be presenting the self-assessment for that section of RDA reporting. So for the bilingual, emergent bilingual, OSP, and ESL, there is a self-assessment training that's on January 25th. That is open to LEAs and ESCs. The link to that training is in the email that you guys will receive today from Susie and team. Again, strategic support plans are required for DLs 3 and 4, submitted and Ascend by February 23rd. DLs 1 and 2, the SSP is optional. The self-assessment. So the self-assessment for bilingual ESL is online in Ascend. And for OSP, it's a fillable PDF that's downloadable from Ascend or the SPM website. The self-assessment for this group is due May 31st, 2024, and that is required for LEAs with a DL 3 or 4 under one of those areas of bilingual ESL, EB, and OSP. DL 1 and 2, again, the self-assessment is optional. DL 3 and 4, it's required to submit. As far as the cadence of meetings, again, that resource that we shared that shows the intervention schedule highlights this, but Susie did want me to point out that the DL3 initial meetings will happen in January, and then there'll be bi-monthly meetings happening March, May/June, and then DL4 initial meetings will be in January, and then they'll have monthly meetings starting in March and running through June. Resources will be placed in Ascend under any type of resource requirements, as well as their special populations monitoring website. So that covers all the pieces that I was responsible for. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Lori. Hey, good afternoon to everyone. I know with all of the information that is coming to you in the last couple of days, you'll be starting to really digest that information and dig in. And so I want to walk you to a few new and or revised resources that are available on the TEA website that you may be interested in. And so I know if you don't live here at the TEA website every day, you might wonder, how do I get to a few of these things? And there are links to these in your agenda that will take you directly to the resources, but also would like to just point out how you can navigate there from our landing page. So when you hit the TEA main website, if you will navigate to the academics tab, look for the special student populations cluster, and then within that group, look for review and support. If you'll click there, you'll see here in this top right-hand menu list, under review and support, there are a couple of entries here for results-driven accountability and also an RDA documentation page. So we'll begin here and scroll all the way to the bottom under RDA guidance documents. I'll point out we have our special education RDA determination level framework and also our bilingual ESL, emergent bilingual, and OSP RDA determination level frameworks. If you're familiar with these particular resources in prior years, you might remember that there was one single framework document that included all three of the RDA program areas. For this year, we've broken those out into special education and BE, ESL, EB, OSP. And for the special education document, we've also integrated a previous resource related to the federally required elements, those FREs. And so you'll see those integrated into the special education determination level framework document. And so taking a look at that document, you can see we have an overview, some applicable links, principles of our determination level methodology, a description of the methodology, a breakdown of the data sources that are used to identify those performance levels that are used to calculate the performance level mean, which is then in turn used to assign the percentile rankings and the correlated determination levels 1 through 4. There's a little brief description with a little bit of technical information about how those performance level means are calculated, and then how the cut points and determination levels are sort of broken down. You'll see this beautiful curve here. That is a kind of a theoretical depiction. That's not to say necessarily that in any given year that's exactly what the distribution looks like, but sort of a theoretical picture of how those determination levels are represented in a frequency across the state. And then after that, you'll see just sort of an actual results table of how the distribution of determination level results is represented across the state based on those cut points at the 80th, 95th, and 99th percentiles. And then just a few explanatory notes. As an appendix to this document, we do have the descriptions of the federally required elements 1 through 4, how those performance levels are assigned, and how they're integrated into the overall system. The bilingual ESL, emergent bilingual, and OSP framework is very similar with the same kind of information applicable to those program areas. It simply does not include the FRE information since it's not applicable to those program areas. Moving back over then to the RDA documentation page. A new resource for this year can be found at the bottom of the page under RDA resources, and that is a new RDA accountability data specifications and timelines document. This is similar to the data specifications document that you might have seen before for state performance plan indicators. But similarly, it gives you a quick breakdown of each of the program area indicators, the domains that they fall into, what they're about in brief, the data sources or data elements that pertain to those indicators. If there's an applicable PEIMS collection, what year and submission that would have been drawn from, and if it is assessment related, which test administrations serve as the data source for those indicators. And so you can see the academic achievement domain, the post-secondary readiness domain, and disproportionate analysis for each of the 3 program areas, OSP, special education, all here in this document. I would point out there are a couple of superscripts that you might notice in looking at individual indicators. For example, you'll see the superscript 1 and corresponding footnote is that indicator is limited to the accountability subset or those students who were present at the snapshot date and also tested or participated in the applicable assessment at the same district. Also footnote 2 corresponds to whether or not there is a significant disproportionality SD analysis related to that indicator, which would relate to the information Lori presented earlier and those notifications related to those. And so those are 3 important resources that we feel like can be of great use to you as you start to dig into your information. Of course, there are many other resources available on those 2 pages. Again, those links are in the document. You may notice that I'm listed twice on the agenda with another item for a new RDA resource, but that's all the information, kind of just for streamlining presentation purposes, covered it all there in one shot. So when you don't see me again, there's not anything that you're missing. But thank you again for being here today, and good luck.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. It's a lot of information, a lot of good information. So thank you. Susan, I know that you're going to share with those of us who are here today a little bit about the assurance statements. So you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. My name is Susan Bynum. I'm a manager in the Special Population Strategic Supports and Reporting Unit. And as Lori discussed, we will be talking, and Jeremy, talk about assurance statements. So all LEAs that received an SD3 letter must log in to the legal framework and complete their assurance statement. LEAs that did not receive an SD3 letter do not need to complete the assurance statement. And in fact, they won't be able to log in because it's only going to be open for LEAs that did receive that letter. So as said earlier, that assurance statement is scheduled to open today, the 11th, and it is only open to the SD3 LEAs, and it needs to be completed by April the 12th. Also, we know there are a lot of new special education directors this year, and if anyone is having any difficulty or any new directors are having difficulty, they can contact their legal framework representative at their ESC. I'm going to share my screen and share that website with you so you can see that. Is that showing my website, Anna? I can see you. Okay, thank you. It didn't highlight for me. So the way to log in to get to your assurance statements is you click here on administrator login. And that's where you would log in. This is also where people that don't have an account can set up their new account. So when they're here and they see administrator login, that's okay. Click on that, and then they can set up their new account right here if they need to, or if it's just a new person doing your assurance statement. Additionally, to find your regional contact, you'll go here. You can go to regional contact information, and it will list out your regional legal framework contacts, or you can hover over your region right here, and that will show you their contact information also. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach out to them. Again, they need to be completed by April 12th. And we've updated them because the SD3 RDA reports came out a little later, but it's it's not going to look surprising. It will be pretty much the same. We updated some verbiage, but the process is going to be the same. So that is it for me. That should be open already, actually. So
Awesome.
let your legal framework people know if you have any problems accessing that.
Thank you, Susan. And I like the visual of how to get the information for the ESC contact. It's very easy. So thank you for sharing that. So thank you everyone for joining us. That concludes our webinar for today. Just as a reminder, it will be recorded and posted onto the website in the next few days. So please check back for any additional resources in the recording on the website. Thank you all.